What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another update video to my research paper, and by that, it's finished. I finished it up tonight, like 30 minutes ago. I just printed it out. It's 26 pages, including bibliography. I think without bibliography, it's 30 or 24 or something. And it's a little bit of a reflection because it's done. It's off my mind. We've made it. When I turned in my rough draft was 23 pages. I'm pretty sure. So I added 3 pages from rough draft to now, and a lot of that was based off of professor recommendations. I sent my rough draft in over email instead of in person because I couldn't go to class that day, and he sent me some prompt feedback. I'm pretty sure like the Wednesday, so like a couple days later. I just want to like read what he said. Like he gave me some tips because I'm in the last video. I read my paper out loud, all 19 pages of it. I think no, that I don't remember how much of it I read. I might have read like the first little writing sample, which was like 10 pages or something. Um, and so my original rough draft that I sent him a couple weeks ago was 19 pages of content. And he basically said, "This is pretty good. He liked it." And then he gave me some suggestions, which I used to beef up my paper. He basically said the section on race in the second half of the paper is largely based on secondary sources. Can you locate primary sources to illustrate your points or back them with evidence? One interesting approach would be to read Gorgas's writings and speeches for places where he discusses race, or records that have looked at for discussions for race, health, medicine, disease, etc. That was pretty fair. I think a lot of the sources that I was going to look at, I didn't have time to look at, or I didn't look into them as like a lot of primary sources that I was going to look at specifically. I didn't have enough time to look at them, or I didn't look at them deeply enough because they're boring, like the ICC records and stuff like that. I didn't have time to look through every single year like I said I was going to. And I think that's also because I changed the structure of my paper itself. I felt it was less necessary to look at those records. I think I should have. And so what I did was I looked at a lot of Gorgas's readings, a lot of Gorgas's writings and speeches, as well as other people of the time. Like I think I got like 1 or 2 ICC commission things in there, the Isthmian Canal Commission. Some of Gorgas, I think I got like 3 or 4 of Gorgas's speeches, and then I had another doctor or two, as well as I think I got like one other observer from the time to talk about the race stuff. I think I beefed him up a decent amount. I don't know if it's as much as he wanted. I don't know if it's even in the correct sections, but I think I did that pretty decently. And that was a lot. That wasn't any like actual additional writing. That was just beefing up the sources. So that didn't add too much to the length, besides the footnotes getting longer and the bibliography getting a little bit longer. The second point he said is probably worth discussing the reason why West Indian workers were brought to the canal. Did disease, health, ideas about race, and climate play a role in the efforts to bring West Indian workers to the canal? Can you find in the sources discussion of malaria and yellow fever and their relationship with West Indian immigrant workers or migrant workers? Were these workers believed to carry disease? Did this become a pretext for segregation? Were they believed to be more immune to the disease than white or North American workers? I thought this was a good point. I on some aspects. I already talked about them. I think I had like a whole page basically just talking about like the labor system that they were working, like that the United States was implementing, like the gold roll and the silver roll as part of a bigger labor system concept called the third nation concept. And I said basically my context of discussing them outside of being like, hey, they're the workforce, was talking about that they were the third nation. West Indian workers were the third nation in that. And so I talked about it through that lens. I added a good bit about this. I think I like added up to like a page and a half or something. Just talking about like I talked a little bit about the recruitment campaign that the U.S. did, like how they actually got them there, why they got them there, or like why they started looking for that. And it is disease related, obviously. They thought, okay, like they're black, or like specifically the Afro West Indian workers, they're black and they live in this climate, they will be immune to diseases. That's obviously not true. We know that now, but so that was a big motivator for them. And then I talked a little bit about the recruitment process, and that was about a page and a half. I think it was a worthwhile addition. I agreed. I agreed with his points. I feel like even though I did talk about them, I probably could have talked about them more. So that was another good pointer. And then his last like big pointer, or his last pointer that he told me about. What about the indigenous Panamanian workers, or simply workers from Panama? How do they fit in this story? I included a little bit about them. I didn't talk about them at all actually in this paper. Before I read that, and honestly, before like an hour ago, like as I was wrapping up, I still didn't really put them in the paper, which I think is weird for me to do, but or what it was a weird thought to have in the first place, because they are obviously important to this whole thing as well. So I did. I added a page a page or so about them, basically just talking about how much the U.S. hated Panamanian people. They built entire towns to avoid interacting with Panamanians. They hated them so much. They thought they were inferior and disease ridden. Were two of the main quotes I got, which is also that was another thing is I added this and then I added primary sources that basically was like we hate you, like, so that added another like page and a half maybe, and that yielded this bad boy. That yielded this 26 page behemoth that I have to go turn in person tomorrow at his mailbox, and then I'm gonna be done forever. For now, at least forever for now, and it's really cool. It feels like I've accomplished something. This is the biggest piece of research I've had to do. Cause I think the other largest research paper I did was like 10 pages or something, and it was comparing. I think it was comparing the U.S. and Australia, in COVID, because that was for my pandemic. Oh no! I'm lying. I lied. I had a 15-page research paper for math, the history of math. I talked about music theory in that. If you want to hear me talk about music theory, it's pretty interesting. The connections to math, like specifically with algebra, abstract algebra. There's a lot of things you can do, like a lot of things that you can like talk about in music theory. You can translate it into groups and talk about it through that, like cyclic and abelian groups and stuff like that. That's really interesting. It was a lot. There's some that I started to get into that was a lot over my head, like with lattices and stuff like that. And I just like that's not for me. I don't like. She got on me, and I think she could have said that in the rough draft that or like my perspective / my rough draft that I presented, that I should have explained the math more. But realistically, that was a graduate level math class. I assume that my average reader is going to know what a group is and what a cyclic group is and what an abelian group is. But that's not the point. That's not the point of this video at all. That's a different video if you guys want to know. It's interesting to me. I got like a B on that paper, and I was actually very upset about it. I thought I did a lot better, or I should have done better. But whatever. Yeah. So this is the longest research paper I've done in like a year, apparently. And it was a lot more labor intensive. And I think, like, what did I learn from this? That nothing scares me in terms of like procrastinating, because I procrastinated this in every single stage of it and I still did fine, which I think is the worst thing I could take away from this, is that we had a semester long research paper. I came up with an idea pretty early on, which is what he wanted, which was good. I changed that idea once when I realized it would probably be hard to research. That was the Cuban espionage in the Revolutionary War, which would have been awesome to write about, but I don't think there was any source there would not have been enough sources for that. So I picked this idea pretty easily, or pretty early on. Not as early as some of my other classmates, but still like before our deadline. I at least had the idea. I was cooking a little bit. I met with him every time he needed me to. I talked with him about, I think I offered to meet with him another time. So like I showed initiative. With research, I was a little bit lax with it. I could have been more rigorous. I could have read more. I only like really pulled up PDFs and searched near the end, because obviously I read like 4 books in a week, and that was like, they were all like hunks of books that were also boring and about the exact same thing, to the point where like some of them were sentence for sentence, and then like some of the books were just citing the other books that I've already read as like their main source. I'm like, wow, riveting. I fucking know this already. Ooh, I know this. But I could have been more rigorous with my research. I think near the end, especially because I had some other personal stuff going on. Around the time of like when I'm turning in my mock draft or my rough draft, I had some other stuff going on. I did not dedicate myself to the research anymore. I honestly, yeah, I could have been more thorough in that regard. I think writing it would have been a little bit less stressful if I spaced it out more, if I wrote more smaller bits more consistently. Because the way I wrote this, because if my rough draft was 19 pages, I think I wrote the first 6 pages in one night, and then I wrote 4 pages the day before my writing sample was due, because I talked to him individually about submitting just a writing sample to show that I had something, and I, spoilers, did not have something. So I wrote that was 4 pages, and then the rough draft I wrote the next 10 the night before it was the day it was due, because I wasn't in class. So I was like, okay, I just emailed to him at some point, and I took the entire day writing 10 pages. And then I just did this the night before it's due. Like, I have to turn this in by 5 o'clock tomorrow, and I did all of my revisions and like my stuff like that. So I think realistically, he tried to make it as easy as possible and as streamlined as possible to do it. And I just procrastinated it like everybody else who should. And it's like, that did not teach me the lesson this was supposed to teach me, which was how to do organized research in one fell swoop, or like in a nice staggered process, honestly, or actually. And I didn't learn that lesson. I didn't learn the lesson. Reflecting on it, I think is pretty good. I think I can see it. I can see what's happening. But I'll take that away from it. I'll be like, oh, that was pretty good. Like, all right, I did a good job. I think hopefully we'll get a good grade on this. The way he reacted to my rough draft was that it was pretty good. And that at least I attempted to add some of the things that he was talking about. 30% of my grade is participation, which I was lacking in at different parts of the semester, because I can read. I did all of the readings during the class, which is basically a book a week. I never really I had like a comment the majority of the time. I'd talk about it a little bit, or like, stuff like that. Like, I've always been bad at class participation just because I don't think that quickly in a group setting. Or so, like, a lot of comments I did make were like pretty surface level, which could screw me up a little bit. I remember I remember one of my TAs. I had him for 3 semesters in a row for 3 different classes. And I remember I was talking to him, and I got a recommendation from him for an internship I was applying to. I got the internship, so he glazed me enough. But I remember he was like, I'm gonna need some like specifics from you. Like, what do you like? What should I focus on in your letter? And then he was like, and I talked with him a little bit about grad school. Actually, this is when his comment that I'm thinking of came up, because he led the weekly discussion sections that we had to go to for my history classes. And he was like, yeah, if you want to get into a good grad program, you probably should like make better relationships with higher people than me. He's like, we have a good relationship. Like, I've taught you for 3 semesters. I know who you are. Like, I can tell you what you're good at, what you're not. But you need to make relationships with higher people. And he was like, and also realistically speaking, you need to participate more. Like, I've had you in 3 discussion sections, and I would not say word for word. I think it was, I would not describe you as a shining star in discussions. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. Shoot. Like, all right, yeah, fair enough. So I didn't learn that lesson. I actually actively avoided learning that lesson. So that might hurt my grade a little bit. My grade is literally 30% participation and then 70% this final paper. I don't think you'll fail me. Realistically, I don't think you will. I don't think you should. Because it's my last class. When I turn this in, I'll be done with college as far as I know it. Which is cool. It's a very cool feeling. It feels nice, but it's scary, and that's a different video. That's a different video as well. It's gonna give me a lot of free time after writing this behemoth. I'm proud of it. I printed out a second copy on my bed because I want to keep one for myself, like in my records. But yeah, that's about it. My research paper is done. If anybody's interested, I could make a video just reading the paper. like I did with my writing sample, just to give a little bit more of a background, I can now officially say that I am a amateur expert in the Panama Canal and the racism of the Panama Canal. And it's funny that this paper changed to racism. I think it talks more about race than it does malaria, which malaria was the main goal in the first place. But I'm an expert in that. I know my stuff. I know Gorgas. I know who Gorgas is. It's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I'm done. I finished my paper. It's done. I'm proud of it. I'm relatively proud of it. I think it should pass me the class at the very least. Yeah, I don't know. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being a part of this journey.